Hey there. Hi. Good evening. Today is Motherhood Monday, where we talk something inspirational or hi guys, where we just talk about parenting or motherhood or something along those lines. And so today, today I want to talk about something that's kind of near and dear to my heart, and it's kind of sensitive, I guess. First off, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Virginia. I am the author, blogger, and speaker at virginiageorge.com, where I blog about faith and parenting and life after depression. And so tonight I want to talk to the mom who feels like she can't do it anymore, to the mom who is struggling to hang on, to the mom who just wants the fight to be over. I hear you. I was there. I was the mom of 4 kids, 6 and under. At one point I had a newborn, 2, 4, and 6-year-old. My husband was gone a lot. He had a couple of jobs that took him away from home sometimes. And my house is under construction all the time. He's a carpenter. My husband is a carpenter, did residential remodeling for a living. So there was always some kind of a project going on in our house. So the house was, which meant that the house was torn apart. There were extra tools there. Things were not getting put away. Things were not getting finished. So I lived in chaos, right? My husband's never home. I have 4 young kids. My marriage was strained. We were struggling to connect and just really to hang on. That's just a little bit of background about, where this all began for me. And I have a blog post on my website. If you go to virginiageorge.com and do a search for The Darkness Begins, that's the story of the beginning part of my story and my journey through depression. But before we get too far into this, I just want to be clear that I'm not an expert. I'm just here to share my journey in the hope that somehow it can help another woman. It can help another mom out there get through these, what can be really challenging and really dark and troubling times. The long and the short, I guess, is that I was overwhelmed, and I've learned that for my own mental health, that when I get a combination of feeling alone and feeling rejected, that it's a bad soup. It's a really bad situation for me, and that is where when I have a tendency to get to my lowest. So there was a point in all of this where I didn't want to go on. It wasn't that I couldn't, I didn't want to. The pain that I felt was too great. I just wanted it to be over. It wasn't necessarily feeling like my kids would be better off without me, or my husband would be better off without me, or anything like that. It was just, I can't do this anymore. And now before somebody pops on here and says something along the lines of suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem, I just want to forewarn you that if you say that in my presence, I might punch you in the throat. And pardon my violence, but if you've never been in that place of despair, of just the bottom, just the absolute bottom, you can't understand. And when you're in that moment, you cannot see beyond right now. Whatever you're feeling at this moment feels like you're going to feel this forever. You can't understand that. Your brain cannot comprehend that there is a time when you're not going to hurt this badly. So please don't say that to people. Give them empathy and hold their hand and be there with them. Don't. It's not helpful to say those kinds of things, especially. So if you've been in a situation like that, you can understand. And it's honestly something that I've seen when Robin Williams committed suicide. Was it last year? There were a lot of posts about it, and reading the comments, I saw that was a really common feeling, is that when you're in that place, you cannot see beyond this present moment, and it truly feels like this utter anguish pain, this unthinkable feeling is going to last forever, and that it's not going to go away, and you just can't figure out how. You just don't want to hurt anymore. You're just tired of the struggle and the fight. And so they're just and I'm not in that place anymore, and I'm really grateful. It took a really, it took a lot. It took a lot of kind of some big events and some big decisions on my part to get through it. So today I want to give you hope and give you encouragement that it won't always be that way. And I know that those sound like empty words. So again, I'm no expert, but I do want to share with you the things that worked for me to get myself to a different place, to get to myself to a place of peace. The first thing I did was to identify what I was responsible for. So there's a book called Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend, and it talks a lot about, let me give you this analogy, and this is, I actually didn't finish the book. I got it from the library, and then I read a bunch of it, and then I had to bring it back, and so now I bought it, and I haven't gone back to finish it, but this is the most helpful thing. The most helpful thing for me was to realize that, picture your neighborhood, or a neighborhood, any kind of suburban neighborhood. Okay, you have a yard, and you live in a house, and you have a yard, and it's fenced in, right? And your neighbor has a yard. And you are responsible for your yard. You're responsible for picking up the dog poop. You're responsible for mowing the lawn, for trimming the trees. You're responsible for your yard. Your neighbor is responsible for their yard. And so understanding what I was responsible for, what was in my yard, as a mom and a wife, I found that I identified with my roles. My worth and my value was tied up completely in my roles. I was, a wife, I was a mother, and if I failed at those things, then I was failing at life. Those were the things where I gained my own value from, and those were, when I was struggling in those areas of my life, it meant that, that's, if I wasn't doing well in those areas of my life, then it was a very negative thing for my self-worth. And I had to pull myself away from my roles and see who I am and realize what I could affect. So the first step then was understanding boundaries, understanding what is my responsibility. The second thing was to change what I could. To look and see what in this situation is really within my power to change now that I understand what my boundaries are. And I actually listened to this book, Melody Beattie, Codependent No More. And I think there's an updated version, but this is the one I could get cheap on half.com because I listened to the audiobook and I didn't have a physical book. But So throughout this whole process, I learned that I am a codependent. And what does this mean? It means that I like to fix everything, that I feel like everything is my responsibility. And I would do things to try and maintain everybody else's happiness. If there was a situation where my husband was hurt by something I said or did, whether, we have to set boundaries, right? We have to set rules and things in our lives to keep us safe emotionally. And if I even set a healthy boundary and it upset him, I felt like it was my responsibility to make him happy again, to buffer his pain, and to be there and then for that. And also to have my hand in every pot in my family's life and just keep everything together and not allow him to be responsible for some things or for the kids to be responsible for something. So I just had my hand in everything. And I realized that it was not a good thing because I was burned out, because I was so caught up in all of my roles and trying to manage everything within my roles that I lost myself completely. I was just a doer and I was a keeper of the family, but there was no room for Virginia. She was completely buried and forgotten about. So that was the second thing I did. So the first thing I did was identify what I was responsible for, figure out my boundaries. What's my responsibility to change? And the second thing was to change what I could. To take that responsibility then and do what I could within myself. And then the other half of that is just to let go of what's not yours. So if, my husband was upset about something that happened at work, I can listen to him and I can support him, but it is not my job to fix it. It is not my job to please him all the time or, just to make everything better. And the third thing then that I did was to fall in love with God. And I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but I really just got to this place where I just sought after the Lord. And it wasn't like, so previously my prayer life was like, oh Lord, I'm really struggling with this. Help me with this. Or, thank you for the things you've given me. Bless the food. Amen. It wasn't soul searching, and it wasn't seeking after God for who he was. And I just kind of began to seek the Lord, and just be grateful for who he was and for who he was in my life and the things that he was doing in my life, and not to ask him to change everything, and not to ask him to, change my husband's heart or show him this or help me with my kids, but just to stop and seek after him and to learn who he is. And rather than praying for my situation, I had to kind of rewrite my thinking a little bit. And rather than, it was like there'd be times where I could feel my soul kind of sigh, like, oh, like I'm struggling with something, right? There's something that's heavy that's weighing on me. And I could just like feel my soul sigh and be like, oh, Lord, please help me with this situation or give me the strength to deal with it, or the knowledge or the understanding and discernment to go through something. And rather than doing that, I started praying, and my heart would sigh and I'd go, oh, Lord, I just thank you for who you are. I thank you for the strength that you've given me. I thank you that you walk through this life with me every day. I just thank you for your beauty and for all of your creation and all of the things in this world. And I really began to just praise him. And then the kind of a funny thing happened is I just craved worship. I craved praise. And I was going to church like 4 days a week. There's my church and then a neighboring church have a Celebrate Recovery program, which is kind of like a 12-step program, only Christian. And they have groups for addictions, but they also have groups for life issues. So people going through any kind of a life issue, divorce, anger, depression, food addictions, and codependency. And so I really just use those groups and those times and that worship to just, kind of like an alcoholic going to AA meetings. I was just going constantly because I needed that filling. I needed that worship and I needed that praise and that time to just fill my soul. And I really just began to fall in love with God, and it's been incredible, the changes that it has made for my life. It's given me a lot of peace. So I know that sounds kind of simplistic, and when you're in that place of darkness and despair, and you just can't see that there's hope, I just want to be here tonight and tell you that there is hope. There is hope, and you can't see it. You might not be able to see it, and that's okay. It's okay if you can't see it, because I see it. And I believe it for you. So I will have hope for you. And your job right now is just to hang on. So do something, find ways that you can fill your soul. And I'm not just talking about like, there are things as moms that we do, right? Like, I'm going to go lock myself in the bathroom for 5 minutes so I can breathe. And then I'll come back out. I'm not talking about things to cope to get through the day. Find something that you can do that fills your soul. Something that just nourishes who you are inside, something that is for you and only you, whether that's scrapbooking or something, a creative outlet, dancing, knitting. I like to knit. Praise. Find something that truly nourishes your soul, that doesn't just get you through the day. Find something to begin to fill your heart, to fill your bucket, inside, so that you're not pouring out. Do something just for yourself, one thing at a time, one day at a time, and don't give up. Just hang on, because I'm here to tell you that if you do that, if you really start to fill yourself, you really begin to nourish your soul. You begin to let the Lord lift you up and to show you how he really sees you, because I can almost guarantee it that he sees you so much differently than you see yourself, that he loves you more than you can even comprehend. And this is something that I'm really, really learning right now, is just like the purity and the expanse of his love. And it's cheesy, and I've grown up in the church and I heard it all my life, and I never understood it until now. I truly did. 33 years old, and I finally figured out what it means to say that God loves me. And I know that he loves you as much. So the other day, just as kind of proof that that it works to just hang on, I was walking. My husband and son were at the harbor. There's a harbor nearby that we like to go and walk and look for sea glass and stuff at. And we were kind of in the midst of like this huge family crisis. Like something really, really significant and big and scary happened in our family. And as I was walking to meet my husband at the harbor, he and my son were already there, and I was behind them. As I was walking there, in the midst of this really troubling time, I felt such peace. And I looked around and I was like, I'm okay. My life is not always pretty, but it's beautiful. I'm so grateful for the path that he's taken me on. I'm so grateful for having another day, for having the ability now to look and see his peace and see his joy, and to just kind of begin to understand who he is. And it's remarkable that I could stand there and have peace, that I could feel content with my life at that moment, knowing that such a big and bad and ugly thing was hanging over my head. But just to be able to trust in the Lord and say, I know you've got this. I don't understand how, I don't understand why, but I know that you've got this. So today, sweet mother who feels like she cannot hang on any longer, who just wants the pain to go away, I'm here to tell you to just hold on, to find a way to nourish your soul, to give the Lord a chance to lift you up, because I know that it can happen, because he did it for me. So I encourage you, if you're in that place, send me a message, or go to my blog, virginiageorge.com, and you can see my story there. There's a 3-part series. Starts with the darkness begins, and then unglued, and then the last one is the light, and it kind of walks you through, or shows you the way that the Lord pulled me out from my my initial darkness, and it hasn't been straight up from there, absolutely not. But over the last 5 months, I've grown a lot and really sought the Lord a lot, and have seen a lot of change. So if you're in that place, I just encourage you to get a hold of me if you can't see the hope, because I'll find the hope for you. I'll hold on to hope for you, and just hang in there. So with that, I will bid you adieu. I pray for you tonight that you would find joy and peace in the Lord, and hang on for another day. So I love you, sweet moms.